Carlos Rivera thought Diana Ross was having a breakdown. In his 15 years as a stage manager, he'd never seen a performer stop mid-song like this. But what happened next at Caesar's Palace on September 22nd, 1987, would become the most legendary moment in Vegas history. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment about your favorite Diana Ross or Whitney Houston song. You won't believe what these two legends created together. Diana was halfway through I'm Coming Out when everything changed. The 3,000-seat showroom was packed with celebrities, high rollers, and music industry executives. This was the final week of Diana's farewell Vegas residency, and tickets were impossible to get. Carlos stood at his usual spot in the wings, monitoring every technical detail with military precision. "Lighting Q7, go!" Carlos whispered into his headset as Diana spun across the stage in her sequined gown. The spotlight followed her perfectly, sweeping across the audience during the song's crescendo. That's when Diana's voice suddenly stopped. The band, confused but professional, continued playing for a few more bars before gradually trailing off. Carlos felt his stomach drop. "What's wrong?" he radioed the sound engineer. "Is her mic cutting out?" But Diana wasn't having technical problems. She was staring directly into the VIP section, her hands shading her eyes against the bright stage lights. The entire showroom fell silent, 3,000 people holding their breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," Diana announced, her voice carrying clearly through the venue, "stop everything." Carlos's heart was racing. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't planned. This was every stage manager's nightmare until it became every music lover's dream. Diana pointed directly at someone in the front row. "The future of music is sitting right there in seat A7. Carlos grabbed his binoculars and focused on the VIP section. There, trying to sink lower in her chair, was a young woman in an elegant black dress. Even from the wings, Carlos could see her embarrassment. She was shaking her head, clearly wanting to disappear. "Whitney Houston," Diana called out with authority. "Get up here right now." The name rippled through the audience like electricity. Whitney Houston, the rising star whose debut album had exploded just 2 years earlier. Carlos had heard her music on the radio, but seeing her here, looking so young and overwhelmed, was shocking. But what happened next left Carlos speechless. Whitney was shaking her head frantically, but Diana wasn't taking no for an answer. "Security, help that beautiful girl up here. She's too shy for her own good." As two security guards gently escorted Whitney toward the stage, Carlos could see her whispering protests. "I can't sing in front of Diana Ross," he heard her say as she passed his position. "This is crazy." Diana met Whitney at the stage stairs, taking her hand like a mother welcoming her daughter home. "Don't you dare be nervous, baby," Diana said into her microphone, her voice warm with genuine affection. "What's your favorite song?" Whitney leaned close to Diana's ear, speaking so quietly that Carlos had to strain to hear. "Ain't no mountain high enough," she whispered. Diana's face lit up with pure joy. She turned to the band with the confidence of a conductor addressing her orchestra. "You heard her, gentlemen, and transpose it to Whitney's key. She's got pipes that could shatter crystal." The opening notes filled the showroom, and Carlos watched something magical happen. Whitney started hesitant, her voice barely audible, but Diana stood beside her, harmonizing softly, encouraging every note. "Sing it, baby," Diana whispered between verses. "Show them how it's done." By the chorus, Whitney had found her confidence. Her voice soared above Diana's, creating harmonies that seemed impossible. Carlos realized he was witnessing 2 generations of vocal royalty creating music together spontaneously. The audience was transfixed. Carlos could see people pulling out cameras, others wiping away tears. In the VIP section, industry executives were frantically making phone calls. This wasn't just entertainment. This was history being written in real time. "Listen to those ad-libs," Diana laughed as Whitney improvised around the melody. "This girl's got soul in every cell of her body." The song built to its climactic finish, both women holding the final note together. Whitney's voice, clear and powerful, blended perfectly with Diana's seasoned warmth. When the music ended, the silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the showroom erupted. Carlos had worked thousands of shows, but he'd never heard applause like this. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. People were crying, screaming, throwing flowers. In the VIP section, Quincy Jones was on his feet, clapping with tears streaming down his face. Diana pulled Whitney close to the main microphone. "Remember this night," she told the audience, her voice thick with emotion. "You just watched a legend being born. Whitney Houston is the future, and the future is now." Whitney was overwhelmed, tears making her mascara run. She hugged Diana tightly, whispering something that made the older star smile. Then Whitney addressed the audience directly. "Miss Ross has been my idol since I was a little girl," she said, her voice still shaky from emotion. "This is the greatest honor of my life. Thank you for believing in me." As the two women left the stage together, Carlos realized his job had just become infinitely more complicated. His headset was buzzing with calls from record executives, entertainment reporters, and venue management. Within an hour, bootleg recordings of the duet would be circulating through the industry. "Carlos," Diana called as she passed him in the wings. "Did you get that on tape?" "Every second, Miss Ross," he replied, still stunned by what he'd witnessed. "Good," Diana smiled, "because that little girl just became a superstar, and I want proof that we were there when it happened." Years later, Carlos would describe that night as the moment he understood the true power of music. "Diana created a star in front of 3,000 people," he would tell interviewers. "Whitney went from fan to equal in 4 minutes. That's not just talent, that's magic." The performance became legendary among music insiders. Carlos kept the recording, and clips eventually surfaced showing Whitney's transformation from nervous fangirl to confident performer. Music historians would cite it as a pivotal moment in Whitney's career, the night she stopped being a promising newcomer and became an undeniable force. In 15 years, Carlos reflected, I'd never seen anything like it. Diana didn't just share her stage, she passed the torch, and Whitney caught it with both hands. But the story doesn't end there. What happened backstage after that legendary duet would prove even more significant than the performance itself. As Carlos coordinated the technical breakdown, he noticed Diana and Whitney deep in conversation by the dressing room area. Diana was speaking intently, her hands gesturing expressively, while Whitney listened with the focused attention of a student meeting her master teacher. "Baby," Diana was saying, her voice carrying the wisdom of decades in the industry, "you've got something special, but having the voice is only half the battle. You need to understand the business, protect yourself, and never let anyone dim your light." Whitney nodded solemnly, absorbing every word. "Miss Ross, I've been listening to your music since I was 5 years old. My mother, Sissy, always said you were the blueprint for how a black woman could succeed in this industry with dignity and grace." Diana's eyes softened at the mention of Sissy Houston, whom she'd known and respected for years. "Your mother is a wise woman, and she raised a daughter with more talent in her pinky finger than most singers have in their entire body." Carlos pretended to check sound equipment while eavesdropping on this incredible mentorship moment. He realized he was witnessing more than just a backstage conversation. This was the passing of wisdom from one generation of musical royalty to the next. "The industry is going to try to change you," Diana continued, her voice taking on a protective tone. "They'll want to smooth out your edges, make you more palatable, more commercial. Don't let them. Your power comes from your authenticity. The moment you start singing for everyone else instead of yourself, you lose the magic." Whitney's eyes were wide, hanging on every word. "How do you handle the pressure, the expectations? Tonight, when you called me up here, I was terrified I'd embarrass myself." Diana laughed, a rich sound that filled the backstage area. "Honey, you think I'm not terrified every time I step on stage? Fear never goes away. You just learn to dance with it. And tonight, you didn't just dance with it, you made it your partner." The conversation was interrupted by a knock on Diana's dressing room door. Carlos opened it to find a young man with a clipboard and the urgent expression of a record executive. "Miss Ross, Miss Houston," the man said breathlessly. "I'm David Chen from Arista Records. We need to talk about what just happened out there." Diana stepped protectively in front of Whitney. "Mr. Chen, isn't it? Whitney is having a private conversation. Whatever business you have can wait until tomorrow." But Whitney gently touched Diana's arm. "It's okay, Miss Ross. I should probably hear what he has to say." What David Chen revealed would change the trajectory of Whitney's career forever. "Whitney," he began, his voice shaking with excitement, "in the 30 minutes since you left the stage, We've received calls from Rolling Stone, MTV, Entertainment Tonight, and Good Morning America. Everyone wants to know who you are and where you came from. Carlos watched Whitney's face carefully. He'd seen this moment before, when a performer realizes their life is about to change completely. Some artists panicked, others got overwhelmed. Whitney, however, remained remarkably composed. "What does that mean for me?" she asked simply. "It means," Chen continued, "that your next album release just became the most anticipated event in music. It means radio stations are going to start playing your songs in heavy rotation. It means you just became a household name." Diana stepped forward again, her protective instincts activated. "And what do you want from her in return?" Chen smiled nervously. "Nothing tonight, but we'd like to schedule a meeting next week to discuss promotional opportunities. The duet you two just performed, people are calling it magical. We think there's potential for a collaboration album." The suggestion hung in the air like a musical note waiting to resolve. Carlos could see both women considering the possibilities and the implications. "David," Diana said carefully, "Whitney and I just met tonight. Any collaboration would need to be organic, meaningful, not just a commercial opportunity." Whitney nodded in agreement. "Miss Ross is right. If we did work together, it would have to be for the right reasons. Because the music demanded it, not because some executive thought it would sell records." Carlos admired Whitney's wisdom. For someone so young, she understood instinctively what many artists never learned: that artistic integrity couldn't be compromised for commercial success. Chen left his card and departed, leaving the two women alone again. Carlos continued his equipment checks, but his attention remained focused on their conversation. "You handled that well," Diana observed. "Most young artists would have said yes immediately, overwhelmed by the excitement. You kept your head." Whitney smiled shyly. "My mother taught me to think before I speak. She always said the music industry is full of people who will promise you the world and deliver you a handful of dust." "Your mother is a very smart woman," Diana replied, "and you're a very smart daughter." As the evening wound down, Carlos realized he had witnessed something unprecedented. Not just a spontaneous musical collaboration, but the birth of a mentorship that would influence Whitney's entire career. Diana had done more than share her stage. She had shared her wisdom, her protection, and her genuine care for a younger artist's well-being. "Carlos," Diana called as she prepared to leave, "make sure that recording is protected. Something tells me it's going to be historically significant." "Already taken care of, Miss Ross," Carlos replied. "Multiple copies, secure storage." Whitney approached Carlos before leaving. "Thank you for taking care of everything tonight. I know this wasn't planned." "Miss Houston," Carlos said with genuine warmth, "in 15 years of stage management, this was the most beautiful chaos I've ever coordinated. Thank you for the privilege of witnessing it." As both women departed, Carlos stood alone in the empty showroom, still processing what had occurred. The stage lights were dimmed, the audience long gone, but the energy of that magical moment lingered in the air like perfume. The next morning, Carlos arrived at Caesar's Palace to find his phone ringing constantly. Entertainment reporters, music journalists, and industry executives all wanted his account of the previous evening. By noon, footage of the duet was playing on MTV, and radio stations across the country were discussing the spontaneous collaboration. Carlos Rivera, stage manager at Caesar's Palace, witnessed the entire event, read one entertainment reporter on the morning news. According to Mr. Rivera, the chemistry between Diana Ross and Whitney Houston was immediate and undeniable. Within a week, Whitney's current album sales had tripled. Radio programmers who had been hesitant to add her songs to their playlists were now featuring them in prime rotation. The single performance had accomplished what months of traditional promotion couldn't achieve. But perhaps the most significant outcome was the relationship that developed between Diana and Whitney. They began speaking regularly by phone, with Diana offering guidance on everything from song selection to stage presence to dealing with media pressure. Diana became like a big sister to Whitney, Carlos observed months later. She shared the lessons she'd learned, the mistakes she'd made, and the wisdom she'd gained. It was beautiful to watch. The impact of that September night extended far beyond Whitney's career. Other established artists began seeking opportunities to collaborate with emerging talent, recognizing the mutual benefits of cross-generational mentorship. The music industry started to understand that supporting young artists wasn't just good karma, it was good business. Years later, when Whitney achieved superstar status with the Bodyguard soundtrack, she would credit Diana Ross with teaching her how to handle fame with grace. Diana showed me that success isn't just about talent, Whitney said in a 1992 interview. It's about character, integrity, and using your platform to lift up others. Carlos kept the original recording of their duet, and it became one of his most treasured possessions. He would often play it for visitors, watching their faces light up as they heard the magic of that unrepeatable moment. People ask me what it was like to witness musical history, Carlos reflects, but what I remember most isn't the performance itself, it's the humanity behind it. Two women from different generations connecting through the universal language of music. Diana could have finished her song and moved on. Instead, she chose to create something beautiful with someone she'd never met. That's not just talent, that's heart. Today, Carlos Rivera is retired from stage management, but he still speaks passionately about that magical September evening. The recording has been digitally remastered and carefully preserved in the archives of both artists' estates, a testament to the power of spontaneous collaboration and the importance of supporting emerging talent. That night taught me something truly profound about the music industry, Carlos concludes with evident emotion. Great artists don't just perform, they recognize and nurture greatness in others. Diana Ross didn't just sing a song that evening, she launched a legacy. If this truly incredible story of mentorship and spontaneous magic moved you, make sure to subscribe for more amazing true stories about music's greatest legends. Have you ever personally witnessed a magical moment when someone's life changed in front of your eyes? Share your own experience in the comments down below. The ripple effects of that magical September evening extended far beyond anyone could have imagined. Within months, other legendary artists began incorporating similar spontaneous moments into their performances. Stevie Wonder started inviting emerging artists on stage during his concerts. Aretha Franklin began mentoring young gospel singers publicly. The music industry had witnessed the power of cross-generational support, and suddenly lifting up the next generation became a mark of true artistry. Carlos often reflects on how that single moment of recognition changed the entire culture of live performance. Before that night, he explains, established stars kept their distance from newcomers. There was an invisible hierarchy. Diana shattered that wall with one gesture. She showed that greatness isn't threatened by greatness, it celebrates it. The most remarkable aspect, Carlos notes, is how Diana and Whitney's friendship deepened over the years. They would call each other before major performances, seeking advice and encouragement. When Whitney struggled with personal challenges in later years, Diana was often the first person she reached out to. Diana became Whitney's musical mother, Carlos observes. She protected her, guided her, and never stopped believing in her potential.